Welcome to APA Style Part 2, Avoiding Plagiarism and In-Text Citations. The very first thing I want to talk about today is the SFSC Student Handbook on Academic Dishonesty and Plagiarism. Here we go. Plagiarism, consisting of the deliberate use and appropriation of another's work without identifying the source and the passing off such work as your own. If you fail to give full credit for ideas or materials taken from another, you have plagiarized. It goes on to talk about the consequences and how the college handles that academically, but the important part I want to focus on here is identifying the source and giving full credit for ideas and materials. That is both the heart of what plagiarism is and what we use citations, in this case APA-style citations, to work around. So there are basically three instances when you must cite your work. I like to refer to this sort of humorously as the holy trinity of citations. Number one is facts or ideas. If you get a fact or an idea from a source somewhere other than in your head, you are going to need a citation. For pictures, figures, or tables, if you reuse it, if you copy and paste it, if you remake the graphic but it's basically the same, you're going to need to cite it. Yes, this does even apply to PowerPoints, but if you need some help with citing in PowerPoints, please come by the library or email me. That's a little bit outside of our scope. And finally, and the part we're going to spend the most time on in this presentation, expressions or words. So if you use someone's work word for word, you are going to need to cite it and also place it in quotation marks. So there's a great handout that the SFSC Humanities Department put together back in 2015, and they break it down into these things are always plagiarism, whereas some things are only plagiarism if they're not correctly cited. Let's start with always plagiarism. Presenting a paper as one's own, which has either been obtained in its entirety from another student, from the internet, or from some other source. That's probably the most straightforward type of plagiarism there is, and unfortunately we have had it happen at this college. So make sure you are doing your own work and you're pretty much covered on that one. The next 2 points kind of go together. Improper paraphrasing including copied phrases and or sentences, and improper summarizing including copied phrases and or sentences. So basically, in this case, what usually happens is somebody is taking advantage of the copy and paste function. In other words, they've taken a chunk of work from someone else and put it in their paper. And maybe they thought that, oh, hey, I'll put it all in my own words. I just want to stare at it for a long time, and they forgot. Or they went through and changed like every third or fourth word. But in any case, it is still plagiarism because even if you cite it, you need to make sure that the parts that are word for word the same as your source are in quotation marks. Next we have the unholy mess. That's what I refer to this one as. That's a mix of paraphrasing, summarizing, and direct quotations presented as uncited or undocumented summary or as one's own composition. Once again, unfortunately, this comes up from time to time. And it's the hardest kind of plagiarism to fix because it's very hard to go back and figure out what's paraphrase, what's summary, what's the author's words, what your words are. Honestly, when I see this in my classes or at the library reference desk, I tend to tell students that they just need to start over again. It's very difficult to fix. And finally, presenting a paper from another class as an assignment in this class. Now, at this point, someone will always say to me, but Miss Miller, I wrote that paper. I own the copyright. It's mine. I can do whatever I want with it. And I will say, sure you can. However, it's still plagiarism. The reason it is still plagiarism is, believe it or not, we have you write papers because we want you to learn something from it. If you're turning in something you've already done, A, it's not original work. Remember, we want original work in our academic endeavors. And B, you haven't learned anything from it. So it's very poor form, and it does count as plagiarism to reuse a paper or materials. Now, plagiarism unless correctly cited, as long as you actually do a correct citation for each of these items, we're fine. So direct quotations from a source, we already touched on briefly. A direct quotation, of course, means that you're using the exact words in the exact order as your author. And when you do that, you need to do two things. You must place your direct quotation in quotation marks and cite it. If you're using statistics, tables, or figures, you will need to cite them. If you're summarizing information or ideas from a source, guess what, guys? You'll need a citation. And finally, the incorporated direct quotation. We'll see an example of this in just a minute, but an incorporated direct quotation is where part of the sentence is from a source and part of the sentence is from your own head. And that's fine as long as you make sure that the part that is from the source has a citation and is in quotation marks. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what a citation actually is in APA style. APA style citations actually consist of two pieces: the in-text citation, which I have an example of right here, and the references citation. Now, these are actually the same work. You'll notice that Smith, published in 2014, Smith, published in 2014. This is the short version, this is the long version. The in-text literally appears in the text of your paper, and the references is the long version that allows you to actually find the source and appears on your references page. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, in-text citations in APA take a very specific form. They always include these two pieces of information: author, who said it basically, and the year in which they were published or when they said it. Now, for direct quotes, you must include a page number. For paraphrase or summary or maybe the restating of a fact, that doesn't require one, but they do recommend a page number. But remember, for a direct quote, you are required to use a page number. Let's look at some examples of what an in-text citation actually looks like. Here's the first one. According to Jones, 1998, students often had difficulty using APA style, especially when it was their first time. And then it gives me the page number where Jones said that. So here we have our three pieces of information. Who said it? That's Jones. When they said it, 1998, and what page they said it on. And that's, of course, going to be page 199. Now, I'd also like you to take a look at where the period is. You'll notice that the period actually comes after the citation. This is because the citation is part of the sentence. You cannot actually end the sentence until you've done your citation. Also note that while the author and year come together right here, the page number comes after the actual quote. You may break it up in this way, but the author needs to be paired with the year, because especially as you write longer papers, it's very likely that you will have multiple authors with the same last name or the same author writing multiple papers in different years. So the year is really important to make sure it's right next to the author. So here's that integrated quotation I was talking about. This is Jones, 1998, found, quote, students often had difficulty using APA style, close quote. Then it tells me page 199. That tells me, of course, where that quote came from. But then my sentence continues. What implications does this have for teachers? It's asking a question. This is, of course, completely fine because we have quotes around the direct quotation and a citation consisting of the author's last name, the year of publication, and the page on which the information occurred. Let's look at another example down here. She stated students often had difficulty using APA style. Parentheses, Jones, 1998, P period 199, close parentheses, but she did not offer an explanation as to why. Now this is probably the most common kind of citation, that author, year, page number. That's fine. Remember, you need it to be as close as possible to the quotation, and it is part of the sentence. Now, one final example here. Jones, 1998, asserts that students found APA style difficult to master. Now, this is not the exact words that Jones used. This is a paraphrase of what Jones said. But because I am still saying that this information came from Jones, that's where I got it from, I need to say Jones and the year, even if I do not say the page number. Remember, the page number is recommended, but not necessarily required for paraphrases. Now, there are some special rules for authors, especially in fields like psychology and sociology and nursing. We'll find that we often have multiple authors working together on the same work. So there are special rules for that. You can find more information on the APA handout on pages 7 and 8. But for two authors, we just list them both. Smith and Jones, parentheses, 2004, found that whatever they found. But if we're doing it in a parenthetical, in the parentheses, citation, we will list them as Smith ampersand Jones. Now that's that little and symbol directly above your 7 key on your keyboard. It's called an ampersand. And APA uses that in the references and in your parenthetical citations. Now, for 3 to 5 authors, the first time they appear, we write them out the long way, right? Wallace, Merida, Fox, and Wu. That's exactly correct. Now, that's a lot to type out. So the second time we cite the same source, we would cite it as Wallace et al. Notice that that's et space al period followed by the comma. Now, et al is an abbreviation for et aliases, which is the Latin for and all those other names, basically. So that is our kind of way to avoid typing everything out. Now, for 6 or more authors, we don't have to type them all out. We just list the first author, in this case Miller, et al, followed by the year. Finally, you can also have an organization as an author. So, for example, the World Health Organization, the National Institutes for Mental Health, even the American Psychological Association, they all put out official documents. They're not authored by a person, they're authored by the organization as a whole. And so an organization can be an author. So in this case, I show you what that will look like. Here we go, World Health Organization 2014, and that's fine. To review, APA style requires in-text citations for all material from other sources. This includes facts, ideas, and materials. That includes words and graphics. All citations in APA style need the author's last name and the year, and direct quotes require page numbers. Otherwise, page numbers are recommended but not required. So in our next presentation, we'll talk about how to deal with reference citations.